Okay, it looks like we're ready to get started. We'll just do a little intro as people are still starting to sign in. So welcome to our Nova Scotia Green Education Snapshots event, hosted by the Nova Scotia Environmental Network's Environment and Sustainability Education Caucus. My name's Hill, and I work with Supernova as a program coordinator doing STEM outreach, but particularly oceans outreach with youth around Atlantic Canada. The Nova Scotia Environmental Network's Environment and Sustainability Education Caucus usually hosts an event like this every summer solstice in person, where we can meet, share some of the work that we do, share a meal and network, but we've adapted that to online this year, of course, with the current public health measures. But I think that the event's turning out to be a really great event. If you're just joining us now, earlier on in the afternoon, we had some great presentations from a few different organizations, but we've got another 5 slated for today, or for this afternoon. So before we get started, I'd like to just take a moment to acknowledge the land that we're on. Today, some of us are streaming to you from Chibugtug, or Great Harbor in English, which is also known as Halifax. Chibugtug is part of Greater Unceded Mi'kma'ki, which is the territory of the Mi'kmaq people who live and have lived here for 13,000 years as stewards of the land that we all rely on. As we get together today to learn about environmental education, I think it's important to take a moment to consider the history of the land we're on and the people that hold knowledge of it. How we live together in Chibugtug is governed by the peace and friendship treaties that outline our responsibilities, promises, and obligations to each other. In Canada, June is National Indigenous Peoples Month, and while Indigenous cultures, of course, should be celebrated and respected every single day, now is a great time to take a moment to learn more about the people that we share our space with. So a little bit of an overview for this afternoon. We'll have some presentations. There'll be about 20-minute presentations, including some question and answer time. And we'll be hearing from different organizations, including Reimagining Atlantic Harbors, Halifax Recycles, NSEN, and the Young Naturalists Clubs. These presentations will be tailored towards adults and families that are interested in learning more about the environment and ways that they can connect and engage in nature. But this is really, I think these topics span a wide range of interest and would probably be great for everyone. So thank you for joining us today. Before we get started, I think it would be great for us to know a little bit about who's tuning in today. So we're going to do a quick poll about, and here it's popped up there, just about your background so that our presenters can kind of tailor the presentations for you. As you're answering that poll, I'm just going to go over a few things about the platform that we're using. We are streaming to Facebook as well, and this recording, or this webinar, will be recorded and made available after the event. If you're tuning in on Zoom, we ask that everyone mutes their microphone during the presentation to reduce any interference. And I think we have it set up so that participants won't be able to share video, but you will be able to participate through the chat panel, which you can find kind of directly below where my screen is. And there's also a grid or speaker view in the top right-hand corner that you should be able to toggle to get a view that suits you the best. And last but not least, we would love to have lots of questions from folks that are attending or panelists. So you can find the Q&A section down at the bottom of your screen, and you can submit your questions through there. If you're tuning in through Facebook, you can add them to the comments and they'll be transferred over to our presenters. So it looks like we've got a lot of informal educators joining us this afternoon, some classroom teachers, some parents and grandparents, and nature enthusiasts. So it's great that we have lots of folks joining us today. Thank you all for joining us. And without further ado, I think I'll introduce our first presenter. We have Kelly Schneier, who directs Reimagining Atlantic Harbors. And today, Kelly will be sharing the Storytelling and Watermark project from RAW. So Kelly, you can go ahead and take it away. Thanks.
Hey everyone, I'm really happy to be here. I'd like to thank the NSEN as a whole for being in Nova Scotia. I'd like to thank the Education Caucus for being extremely well organized and professional, And I'd like to thank everybody for coming here and attending for a wonderful afternoon. And I'm going to be talking today about storytelling and the importance of it. Reimagining Atlantic Harbors is the organization that's supporting multiple projects. And the project I'll be speaking about today is the Watermark Project. This is the Watermark Project's logo. As you can see, one drop can emanate or ripple in a large way. You're welcome to visit us at raw2050.ca and share any opportunity to explore the coastline or our watersheds leading to that coastline using the hashtag raw2050. There we go. So Raw 2050 is a shoreline program. Our mission is to empower every citizen to become a citizen scientist. And we do this by encouraging, inspiring, advocating for one watermark story, one data upload, one waterfront at a time. You can see the logo is representative of a bridge between a built environment with a straight road going into the receiving waters, and then a less straight, non-built, natural environment. What we're looking for is stories that can uncover what's underneath, what we can't see, what we often don't think about. And it's not always a blue sky story. It's not always a happy place that we go to. We're not always in a happy place to get there, but to talk about the issue, to celebrate the place that we want to help protect and have importance for is what we're talking about here. So I'd like everyone to think about, from their heart center, where will you make your mark? It's a personal place. So let's reflect and identify with that special place to you. Hold that thought of your special place. Is it somewhere within the region of Atlantic Canada? Is it in your backyard? Is it a place that you swim, that you canoe, that you watch the rainfall, that you walk up and down a river for? Is it a coastline? Think about all the different activities that you've done growing up and how they've shaped you. And really just try to think of that one special place. Try to hold that close, because what we're empowering you to do is to take that story and to add things to it on a continual basis, so you can continue to share it with everybody and further promote awareness of that special place. So your watershed is a really important metaphor. A watershed is a body of water where it starts at a high level and it drains to a particular low level. And think about your influence. What we want to do is make creative solutions to problems using art and science. And so it's this connection that is sometimes lost when we have disciplines that are completely science focused or completely artistic focused. So it's this interconnection, this integrated table that we want you to bring you to. It's also about pollution prevention and the ideas of your actions influencing something downstream. And so these are issues that can be solved, and we're helping promote actions that have the opportunity to prevent pollution within our shared watersheds. And I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to the Watermark Project. And I'm going to share a small video with you, a short video.
As a lawyer, I would go around and investigate people about why they cared about water, and they would tell me the stories about their grandparents taking them fishing somewhere, or that, you know, this is where they first learned to swim. And I realized that these stories were what motivated people to get out on the land, to get on the water and care. Everything was about the water, and yet we didn't know why. No one really defined that. Why do I care about water? That became the watermark. with the watermark, it's usually a specific story. And what is your watermark at this point in your life? What is a memory you have of water that speaks to you, that really captures for you the importance of water? So the watermark, believe it or not, becomes a record. The watermark is an archive where your story gets connected to that water body where it happened. And that begins to form a record in this country of our connection to water. And those stories will protect those water bodies for years to come.
Apologies for my hot corners if anybody saw the rest of my screen there. It's really, sorry, Zoom moment. Apologies, everybody. That was Mark Matson. He's the founder of the Watermark Project, and he's an environmental lawyer. He explained that we're creating an archive. We are leading people. The Harbors program leads people to this archive, and we do it by collecting and engaging grassroots voices, organizations, educators, families, neighborhoods, the already engaged, and then maybe the not so already engaged folks. We did this all last year at the Discovery Center every Wednesday night. We celebrated Watermark Wednesdays and continue to do so using the archive that we did collect from that. We're now moving to a completely online format and would love to help bring people to the archive that exists and does celebrate our shared waterways in an ecological way. So we've had some successes. We've installed a panel, as you can see in the bottom right-hand photo, behind the wave, celebrating the blue flag and the fact that Halifax is a blue flag marina, where promoting environmental education is a key component of the Blue Flag program. And we do hands-on workshops to inspire, to get people's hands wet, to get engaged. And we also collect leading voices. So as a song and a dance, connecting art and science is important and critical. And I just want you guys to sit back and enjoy the message of our local icon, Joel Plaskett.
I'd say it's impossible to imagine a place without the harbor. I mean, it's, in my mind, the center of what is actually the city. There's something neat about being able to connect with the harbor on a daily basis and to cross it. You know, I mean, I think that's one of the things that we have that's really special that makes our city unique in the context of Canada in many respects is, you know, people who live in Dartmouth or Halifax and have to cross to go to work every day, get on the ferry. I love the 12 minutes I get to myself on the ferry. I've grown up around harbors my whole life, from Lunenburg to Halifax. I've never necessarily thought about my connection to it or even to the natural world. But the older I get, I think the more I realize that, like, the natural world and the things that we take for granted are, some of them are being eroded or are changing in dramatic ways where our kids' use of it may be very different than what ours was. One of my earliest memories of a harbor was, don't go play by the harbor, you'll get pink eye. Straight pipes directly into the harbor. I remember it. I mean, I remember standing there, seeing them and being grossed out. My hope for Halifax Harbor and just in general for the environment is that we kind of hold on to our access to it and the idea that it is something to be shared, not owned. There's still this connection to the old world, and you feel this tether to the past when you engage things like the harbor that everybody experiences, and when you actually get out and you sit by the water and you just have a conversation like we're having right now, it's a totally different experience. There's something about living by the ocean that informs the sense of who you are. I don't know if I can describe it any better than that.
Well, thanks everybody. I hope you feel rested and enjoyed the musical interlude. That connection to the shoreline, that interpretive voice that made us all maybe think a little and feel a little. So from an organizational perspective, I encourage all of the presenters as well as all of the attendees to conceptualize that the Watermark project online is a notable archive, a very functional, well-organized one that you can utilize. It is organized in a structure of a map. It can be event-based. It can highlight and profile your organization and connection to issues, waterways, watersheds. It can highlight individuals from a contributor, and it can also highlight yourself as an interviewer. The main goal here is to create awareness of that special place, and then further create awareness by protecting and celebrating it. Because once we prove beneficial use of a water body using this platform, we're able to trigger environmental legislation because we've been able to prove, yes, this place has beneficial use to the person's voice and that particular pin on the map. So it's something to celebrate. As a quick overview, we have lots of opportunities to participate in our watershed, and I'd like you to reflect a little bit again on a fond memory or experience of a body of water that you've had. You're going to be able to help researchers identify where people swim, drink, and fish so that they can protect them further. And also help support initiatives that are safeguarding those waters. And the Harbors program aims to do that fully. So we're spreading awareness. You can check us out on Instagram, on the Watermark page. You can see local faces as well as network members. And you can understand that we have some guided materials to share, and I'm more than happy to facilitate that through a web-based workshop, because when you do promote hand-holding and direction-oriented discussions, you're able to really hone in on that particular narrative that may not be so empowered and further empower it with facts like science and feelings that can be expressed with art. And we use your story further to create collective storyboards and meet people where they are on the shoreline. So in 2020, we will be installing this 4-foot table representing all of the fresh water leading to a place that you are, which is in Mill Cove, behind the Sobeys there in Bedford, where Theodore the Tugboat parks. And having this integrated table as a metaphor for what's needed to bring all of the different levels of government together to protect our waterways from a neighborhood perspective. So I'd like to thank you. I'd like you to share your reflections, collect stories, interview folks, because we hope to protect the places that matter to you. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Kelly. That was really great. I have to say that Kelly has helped me collect watermark stories from some of our Supernova youth, and I found it was like a really impactful follow-up to the lessons that we're doing, because it prompts the students to think about why what we just learned matters to them, and I think that that's a really important piece. If anyone has any questions for Kelly, we do have a couple minutes, so you can submit those to the Q&A, and maybe while we're just waiting, I could ask you a quick question. I was wondering if through these stories that you've collected, have you found that people are connected to the water in ways that maybe you wouldn't, that you didn't expect people to share, or something that you were kind of surprised by, I guess?
I'd like to take the opportunity to demonstrate the disconnect that we have with our backyard waterways. It's vital that we have the type of discussion that's around our own neighborhoods and our own backyards, because so often people talk about this experience and this watermark from a vacation, from a destination that they've been to once, has impacted them greatly, but is in no way related to their everyday reality. And it's this disconnect that we could probably, as literate, educated attendees and panelists, understand that it's based on the textbooks that we grew up with, understanding that tropical waters are more diverse and you can get closer to them and because of the weather. But I think overcoming a lot of these barriers is a critical element of the work we do, and to be closer to the place and places we live and identify with, and sharing those stories is something that has made me even more impassioned to do the work we do. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much. So just while we have a moment here, if folks are just joining us, we do have 3 more presentations coming up covering environmental education and careers. If you have questions for the panelists that you didn't get a chance to ask, we'll be sharing contact information afterwards. But I just do want to take a moment to talk about the Nova Scotia Environmental Network and the Environmental and Sustainability Education Caucus. This is a non-governmental organization network, I guess, of different environmental groups that have a common purpose to conserve and enhance the natural environment here in Nova Scotia. And the Nova Scotia Environmental Network has a number of different caucuses, some that are quite active, but the Environmental and Sustainability Education Caucus hosts several events throughout the year, and we also have monthly meetings where educators can get together and share the work that they're doing and any opportunities that they have to network. And of course, we're doing those online now. But if you're interested in joining our group or the Nova Scotia Environmental Network, I'll make sure to share the website link in the chat. And we really encourage folks to share that with other people that they might think are interested, because the more folks that we have as part of this network, probably the more impactful our work can be. So next up, we have Chloe Kennedy from Halifax Recycles, and she's going to share with us some information about recycling and composting education. And again, don't forget to submit your questions for Chloe in the question and answer. And if Chloe, if you're ready, we'll get you going.
All right. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and thanks so much for the EAC for having me to do this presentation today. My name's Chloe Kennedy, and I'm a waste resource educator with the Halifax Regional Municipality. The name of our department is Halifax Solid Waste Resources, but our more public-facing name is Halifax Recycles. So if you'd like to download the free mobile app, it's available on any of the app stores. You just search Halifax Recycles. And in the app, you can search any waste item and it will tell you where it goes to kind of solve those weekly arguments that you may get in. It also sends you a notification the night before to let you know whether it's green cart or garbage night, so you don't have to peek on the neighbors. So if you'd like to follow us on Facebook as well, you can also search Halifax Recycles and get regular service updates and tips about waste reduction. So the purpose of the presentation for me today is to highlight some of the education and outreach opportunities that HRM offers, and also to provide some recycling information in the form of some myth busting around recycling and organics. So before I get into looking at what's happening right here in Halifax, I do want to highlight what's happening in the rest of the province in case you're tuning in from a place that's outside of HRM. So the province is actually divided up into 7 waste management regions. And there's an organization called Divert Nova Scotia. So they operate provincially, and they have a partnership with each of the waste management regions to provide education and compliance around recycling and organics. So each of these regions is responsible for running its own green cart program, its own blue bag program, to keep those materials out of the landfill. And myself and my 4 fellow educators at HRM, we have counterparts all over the province. So if you live in Cape Breton or the Western region or the Northern region, you can visit divertns.ca, and you can search educators in your area if you'd like to get more information about what's available locally for you. So here in Halifax, partially in thanks to our partnership with Divert, we do offer a number of education programs. But first I'll mention that Divert does have a number of online resources as well. So no matter where you are in the province or even in the country, you can download 28 curriculum-aligned lesson plans that provide activities. They were originally intended for use in school classrooms, but they're also adaptable for families to use, especially when kids are home from schools during COVID-19. There's also workbooks available that teach recycling and waste reduction lessons through, word searches and crosswords and fun things like that. So if there's any parents or teachers tuning in, then those are great resources that you can find on Divert Nova Scotia's website. So here in Halifax, we do have a number of programs, again, in proud partnership with Divert. Of course, part of the regular work that we do is event booths and school and university presentations. So a lot of the events are, saltscapes or the home shows or community events at farmers markets. We also have in-class presentations that we offer from grades P to 12. The presentations can be adapted for any subject matter. We've been to architecture classrooms at Dell and, economics classrooms, environmental studies classrooms, because really waste management is a problem that touches all residents and is really relatable to any field of study. So those events and presentations are a pretty regular part of what we do. On top of those, we do have ongoing programs as well. One that we launched just this January 2020, is the Beyond the 3 R's Business Recognition Program. So this was intended to highlight the great work that the commercial sector is doing to reduce waste, because especially, single-use plastic reduction is having a bit of a watershed moment right now. You're seeing companies like the Chair Shop and the Bulk Barn exploring really robust alternatives to single-use plastic packaging. You're also seeing restaurants and bigger chains moving away from plastic straws in favor of compostable paper straws. So especially as health restrictions are easing now, and if you're going to your local coffee shop or a local grocery retailer and you're seeing that they're taking strides to reduce their waste where possible, then you can visit halifax.ca/B3R to fill out a nomination form, and they'll get a certificate to recognize their efforts. Another program we have is a 4-week education program called Master Composter Recycler. So this is open to 20 residents at a time in the spring and fall, and it involves field trips to our recycling facility, to our landfill, and it also just provides classroom education every Wednesday night around recycling and how to reduce waste. It's intended for environmental professionals who are looking to bolster up their professional development a little bit. It's also open to students and just hobbyists as well who are interested in composting or learning more about recycling. So if you'd like to learn more about that program, you can visit halifax.ca/MCR. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, the spring session was postponed, so we'll keep you posted about the fall offering as well. And of course, as of last week, registration opened up for the Great Nova Scotia Litter Pick Me Up program. So this program has been running for over 15 years and is now being administered by Adopt a Highway in partnership with HRM. So if you're organizing a community litter cleanup, then you can visit halifax.ca/litter to find out how you can sign up for the Great Nova Scotia Pick Me Up and receive your free kit, which includes bags and gloves and a brochure handbook about kind of safety protocols and things like that. So of course, because most of what we do is community-based, it's out there, with the public, our programs have been impacted by COVID-19. So of course, like all the other organizations, we've had to pivot over the last few months to offer our education online. So we launched the 3 R's online program. So the intention of this was to offer workshops and webinars that residents can sign up for online. So the bulk of our 3 R's online program involves 5 workshops. So 2 of the workshops are around the life cycle of recycling. Again, like I said, there's been real renewed interest in what happens to recycling once it leaves the curb, once it leaves the recycling plant. So you can learn about what it becomes, turning the old into new, what happens to Halifax's waste, and also, of course, what goes where, and answering all those kind of burning questions. A program that we're offering on an ongoing basis through the summer and fall is Waste Less Gardening. Because single-use plastic reduction did take a hit during the COVID-19 pandemic, with coffee shops no longer able to accept reusable travel mugs and a lot of grocery stores returning to plastic bags because of health considerations, gardening is an area that not only people have a big interest in right now, but also it's an area that you are able to reduce your plastic. Because of course, if you're making your own backyard compost or have your own worm bin at your house and making your own fertilizer, you won't have to go to a garden center and buy fertilizer in plastic packaging. So that's a way that residents can reduce plastic waste. So we've offered these online workshops, and also we have public webinars from time to time. So you can learn more about the workshops and also the webinars that we offer to the public by visiting halifax.ca/3Rs online, or you can email us at wasteless@halifax.ca to book one of those workshops if they interest you. So that's a bit of an overview of what we've been up to, especially since the pandemic hit and we've had to switch our education and outreach to be online. Like I said, if you're outside of the HRM and you're still interested in what's happening in your municipality in terms of what happens to your recycling after it leaves the curb, then you can visit divertns.ca to find out what's happening in your region. So one of the new education programs that we've been developing is kind of a Mythbuster style program, because with renewed interest in what's happening to recycling, there's a lot of kind of people hearing rules through the grapevine, and maybe there's some misinformation being spread about how recycling programs operate or what rules to follow when you are sorting waste. So we've kind of compiled some of the most common questions that we get from residents and then addressed them in this kind of myth-busting style. So one of the main things that we hear a lot is, if I see a 3-arrow icon on the bottom of any plastic item, then it belongs in the blue bag. So there's a lot of confusion around this point because, of course, this logo shows up on almost every plastic item that you see. So what we often hear is, well, if this item, such as styrofoam, belongs in the garbage in Halifax, why does it have the recycling logo on it? And the answer is that that's actually not a recycling logo. That's called a Resin identification code. And it was developed in the 1980s by the plastics industry so that producers and also manufacturers could communicate with each other around what kind of plastic an item is made of. So in this case, styrofoam is made from polystyrene, which is number 6. So often on hot drink cup lids, you'll see the number 6 PS. That just means polystyrene. So the confusion came around because in the 1990s, the recycling movement kind of adopted the stylized 3 arrows to mean either this item is made from recycled material or please recycle this when you're finished, when really that triangle with the 3 arrows was developed 10 years before that as an identifier for the plastics industry. So that's the answer as to why an item with that logo doesn't always belong in the garbage. So this graphic just kind of shows you real quick some of the different plastics that exist. So you'll often see number 1s and number 2s, of course. That's very common in food and personal product packaging, polyethylene terephthalate and high density polyethylene. So also number 6 is very common in the food and drink industry as well. That's polystyrene. So all those numbers mean is what kind of resin an item is made from, not whether your municipality collects that item for recycling or not. So in Halifax, for instance, the way to tell whether something belongs in the blue bag is whether it's a container plastic or not. So if you have, a dish soap container or a laundry soap container, food container, drink container, any kind of container is collected in our blue bag for recycling. We call it a container-based program. because you're often going to see these resin identification codes on things like sunglasses or, you know, laundry baskets that we wouldn't necessarily be able to collect for recycling, but that would still have the code on them. So I hope that that helps to answer that question if any of you have ever wondered kind of what that means. So it's much better to stick to the container rule than to look for that resin identification code. Please tell this to everyone you know, because we get a lot of contamination in our recycling stream because of the misunderstanding around this code. And contamination would be things like sunglasses, CDs, anything that we're not actually able to send off to market and would have to send off to the landfill after it's put in the blue bag. So another myth that we hear quite often is in HRM, plastic bags are now being landfilled. And the confusion around this piece comes because when China and other countries, you know, major manufacturing countries stopped purchasing film plastic from other countries, it did make markets challenging for a lot of places around marketing their film plastic. So, you know, a lot of countries and provinces and states are now looking at, you know, banning certain kinds of film plastic, be they takeout bags, to try to reduce the amount of plastic produced since markets are challenging around film plastic. In Halifax, we're very, very lucky to have a market right now for a film plastic. And just to clarify, film plastic means plastic bags. It's the stretchy kind of plastic that you can kind of stretch your thumb through, like a bread bag or a Sobeys bag or Superstore bag. So Global News actually did a little bit of an expose on where HRM's bags are being sent. They go to Goodwood Plastic, which is based right here in Nova Scotia. It's a Nova Scotia owned and operated company. So this is what the plastic feedstock looks like. So this is the baled plastic that comes out of recycling plants from Halifax and from other parts of the province that are purchased by Goodwood Plastics. So they take that plastic feedstock and melt it down into these kind of little plastic patties. And then the patties are put through an extruding machine, which just shapes them into lumber. So it's a very simple manufacturing process relatively. And then that lumber is sold in the HRM to Lake City woodworkers, who then crafts it into picnic tables and Adirondack chairs, benches, and that kind of thing. So that's, yeah, again, we're very fortunate to have a market for our film plastic as of right now. And it's a pretty creative solution to the film plastic problem. Another myth that we hear quite a bit that there's a lot of confusion around is if a plastic item says compostable, then it can be placed in the green bin. Compostable plastics hit the market about 10 years ago, and the intention was to have a more environmentally friendly alternative to plastic. So you see things like cups and forks and plastic bags that are made from usually number 7 PLA, which is polylactic acid. That's what the little identifier is that you'll see on the bottom of those compostable cups. But unfortunately, polylactic acid items or PLA items don't decompose in our municipal facilities. So that's why we actually don't allow compostable plastics in the green bin in Halifax. That's because the green cart material here in HRM is actually processed for about 15 months. So 3 months at our facility, 12 months at Elmsdale Landscaping off-site, where it's then used in landscaping applications. So compostable plastic just doesn't decompose into a finished compost product within that time frame. So that's kind of the issue with it. But because it says compostable, of course, you would think that it does belong in the green bin. So we do have compliance officers that try to work with retail companies in the HRM to let them know that that they really shouldn't be selling it to residents since it's not accepted and you could get your green bin rejected. So with that, I'd like to say thank you, and I hope that some of that information has been helpful for you. If you found yourself going, I didn't realize that, that's really interesting, then you can get in touch with us at wasteless@halifax.ca, and you can book an online workshop where we can go into more detail around some of those themes. You can also, as I said, download the Halifax Recycles mobile app. So with that, I will open it up to questions if anybody has any.
Thanks so much, Chloe. That was really, really enlightening for me. I have to say I was definitely guilty in believing a lot of those myths, and our household's a little divided about what goes in the blue bin and what
Oh,
doesn't.
it's a common
So
argument every week.
yeah, it's a
Yes.
weekly discussion, but now we have some information to go off of now. We do have one question from Kara, and they asked, can compostable plastics go into the blue bag for recycling?
That's an excellent question. You can put, I mean, the issue is that normally little solo cups, like the plastic cups that you get for barbecues or parties, are number 1 PET, which is polyethylene terephthalate. And we do have markets for number 1 plastics. So that's usually clear plastic, you know, the little cups that you get. So because we do have a market for number 1 plastics, the number 7 PLA plastics get kind of mixed in there. So you can put them in the blue bag. They do add some level of contamination, but certainly the plastic forks, the plastic compostable straws, anything like that that isn't in the shape of a container should be placed in the garbage for landfill. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for the question. That's there's a lot of confusion around the compostable plastics.
Yeah, that was something that I was wondering as well. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked how you kind of talked about how you've taken advantage of people's interest and extra time now to put into gardening and using that to connect to composting and recycling, because it's not necessarily a connection that you would immediately think of. But I just wondered if you found any I don't know, particular ways that people are kind of making that connection between what goes on in their backyard and what they're creating as waste.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my husband and I started, I mean, I grew up backyard composting, but we just got one not that long ago. And the reduction in material that we send out for collection to the municipal facility is huge. Also, anyone that has a garden or a lawn at home that they have to spread fertilizer on. I'm a pretty avid gardener myself, so I think about this because I've had to buy compost in the past. It's expensive. So if you're able to create your own fertilizer from, you know, the carrot tops and the apple cores that you're paying for anyway, if you're able to create fertilizer with that, then you're only paying for it once, instead of sending all of that precious fruit and vegetable scrap to the city and then purchasing fertilizer at a garden store. So especially with that kind of bump in gardeners during COVID, it's been a really kind of a hook, and we've had a lot of interest from residents around that.
Yeah, it's nice to see some positive things coming out of a difficult time
Absolutely,
for
yeah.
everyone. It doesn't look like we have any questions, but if anyone comes up with any for Chloe, we'll make sure to share that contact information again. Thanks so much, Chloe. That was a great presentation.
Excellent, thank you. Bye, everyone.
All right, just before our next presentation, I want to take a moment to ask another poll, if you would be so kind to fill it out. I'm wondering what the interest would be in people attending another event like this hosted by the Nova Scotia Environmental Network's Environmental Education and Sustainability Caucus. Because we found, yeah, with the changes in our public health restrictions, we've shifted to online, but it seems like we're reaching a bit of a different audience this way. So it's something that we want to consider doing again in the future. So if you could answer your poll, it'd be great. And once everyone's answered, we can just take a quick look at the results here. All right, maybe we'll check in on those poll results in a minute. Oh, it looks like everyone would attend again, so that's great. Stay tuned because we'll hopefully do something like this again. And we are having our monthly meeting coming up this Friday. So if you want to join us for our networking meeting, you can contact one of the organizers or visit the website that was shared in the chat and sign up for our group. So next up, we have Leaf from NSCC that's going to share a little information about navigating environmental careers. So take it away, Leaf.
Thanks, Hel. That's great. And it's so great to be here today. Thanks to the organizing team for pulling this together. I've been a member of the Environmental Caucus for a number of years and have always enjoyed the programs that different partners have put on, and especially those that I was able to bring my students to take part in. So the picture behind me is at Carter's Beach, where we did some dune restoration over my shoulder here. And working with partners is a big part of the way that the teaching and learning is delivered at NSCC. So a little bit of context and background. I'm zooming in today from Petite Riviere, just southwest of Bridgewater, where I live. And for the last 10 years, I've taught at the NSCC Lunenburg campus, which is in Bridgewater. And we're one of the two campuses that hosts one of the core environmental programs for the community college. There are lots of environmental programs for NSCC within that resource management cluster, and I'll share some of those with you in the next 10 or 12 minutes. But as I said, we deliver training, learning in a hands-on approach, and we really do a lot of outdoor field-based learning, land-based learning to really make the adventure real for folks. And we've had great success with high school graduates coming directly into our programs, as well as university or mature students, graduates from other programs, or just different parts of their life where they want to come back to retrain and upskill. And so we've had a lot of success with those students in the past as well. So in the last few years, the last few months, I've moved into a position with the School of Technology and Environment. And we're the school that hosts most of those resource management programs and the environmental career paths that you may not know about within Nova Scotia. So NSCC has 14 campuses and a couple of learning centers, and we are pan-provincial. So we have a campus in Sydney, and we have a campus in Yarmouth, and we have campuses everywhere in between. In a typical year, we'll have somewhere around 25,000 students between all those spaces in either first, second, or third year. We do have some third-year programs or advanced diploma programs. Most of our programs are certificates, a one-year certificate, and many are two-year diploma programs. As I said, we have a handful in almost every school. We have a handful of advanced diplomas as well. You might know us from our work in some of our specialty areas, and we have applied research labs in cartography, the Center of Geographic Sciences down in Lawrencetown. We also have sector-specific applied research in things like advanced manufacturing, oceans technology, and several other fields. We're also looking to increase our offering related to some emerging opportunities within the resource sector. So things like the shift to ecological forestry, what that looks like in terms of a retrain or a new skills base for that sector. We're also looking at a new program, what we call a micro-credential, starting this time next year in coastal protection and coastal observation skills. And we're also doing some work around environmental cleanup and remediation and training for that, as we see abandoned mine sites and other contaminated sites that need labor and skills technicians in those fields. So I'm going to share a screen with you and show the cluster of opportunities that we have for those joining us today on Facebook or Zoom. We may have guidance counselors or teachers. We may have mid-career professionals or young people who are looking to start a career. And so I guess one of the messages I want to leave with you is that NSCC is one option for that. And as a college that has a kind of an open access policy, it's really first come, first serve. That's one of the things that people may not know about the registration and application process, is that if you meet the qualifications for the program and you're among the first 15 or 20 to apply each year, you'll have a spot. It's not a competitive kind of approach where we look at all 200 applicants. We take the first 20. And if you meet the eligibility requirements, which is often high school graduation, then you're part of that program. And so access is an important value at the college. So is innovation and high quality teaching and learning. And so I'll share with you some of the options that we have within the environment and sustainability and natural resources programs. I'm just going to share that screen, and I hope you can see that. So this is directly from our website, and I've put the link in our chat for today. And this is the resources cluster that I spoke about earlier. And natural resources program is the one that I will zoom into. It's the one that I taught in for the last 10 years. So as we scroll down, we can see that this cluster has quite a variety. And I mentioned a couple off the top, and then there are some others that I didn't mention. So when we think about resources, often think about woods and waters, wildlife, and certainly fish and aquaculture, and the operations of aquaculture would be one of the examples of an environmental career. So this is fish hatcheries, like our trout hatcheries or salmon hatcheries inland, as well as marine farming operations. This is a program that is offered in our Shelburne campus. Cannabis cultivation might not be one you think of for an environmental career, but it's certainly a growing industry, and it's in our resource cluster. Our cannabis cultivation program will restart in March of next year in Kentville. Also in Kentville, we have another growing kind of horticulture-based program. This is a 2-year program, a full year program, all 12 months, cool climate wine and viticulture. And this is an outstanding program with a lot of industry support. Moving down the list, we can see that things around sustainability can also come into the trades, and electrical technician as an example of principles of sustainable design and renewable electricity use, smart buildings, and automated systems for heating and cooling. Emergency management, we don't often consider that maybe within the resources sector, but certainly natural disasters and other emergencies can be part of our environmental management services. And so we train that in Truro starting this coming year. And we're really looking forward to, this is a growing interest as well as businesses pivot with COVID. So emergency management is one growing one for sure. So we've got a couple more here in the sustainability and engineering cluster. The Solar City initiative in HRM would be driven by grads from this program who are able to do planning and design for green tech and green energy. This program here is environmental engineering technology, is one of our most advanced, and it's got a real science component to it. It's offered at our Ivany campus in the Center for Built Environment, right there on the waterfront in Dartmouth. And graduates from this program would be those operators of our drinking water supply and our wastewater supplies across the province. And so every municipality essentially has staff, many of whom are graduates of this program there in their on their staff. And back to King's Tech for a minute, and the Kentville location for our campus there. We have a horticulture and a landscape program where you can specialize in greenhouse, indoor horticulture, or outdoor landscaping technology. And lots of plants knowledge, mostly ornamentals, of course. If we move down to this one, which is where I taught in both our Bridgewater campus and our Port Hawkesbury campus, we have the Natural Resource Environmental Tech program. And this is probably closest to the woods and waters, thinking of environmental pathways. It's a 2-year program, and it is essentially based in a lot of forest knowledge around our species, ground cover, shrubs and trees, as well as forest management and watershed management in those first cluster of courses. In the second year, we had environmental technologies and things like indigenous knowledge of the environment and climate change as well. And so this is a program where we take about 20 students each year, and many of these graduates are working in environmental organizations across the province, some in municipalities and some with national parks, and a couple with DFO as well. So you can kind of get a sense of the breadth of that program. And moving down into the cluster, we've got a couple of more related to oceans. Oceans resources, fisheries and aquaculture is a more in-depth program around fisheries and fisheries management tied to the seafood industry, also based in our Shelburne campus. And oceans technology is the gear and gadgets, the remote sensing and the tracking of marine wildlife, as well as marine monitoring conditions. So submersibles, lots and lots of GPS and GIS work, as well as marine navigation and large crafts. And then the last two on the list here are based in our surveying program. So if you like working in the woods and finding the lines for a property and refreshing those, or establishing a boundary on a park, for example, survey assistant, a survey technician, be two options, a 1-year and a 2-year program into that occupation. So the link that I shared has all 14 of those, as well as the, at the bottom, it'll bring you through our online application process. There's a $25 fee for application. And as I said, you'll be either put right into a program for September if there's space, or put on a waiting list, and often the waiting lists will change through the summer months as students decide, you know, maybe come out of the program, or others from the waiting list go into it. So this is the Natural Resource Environmental Tech, or NRET program that I taught within. I won't take too much more time because I'm running shy. But this is a program that has, as I said, we're fully prescribed right now for our 2 campuses. It's delivered with a blended as well as a online. So there's some in person and some online, and lots of field work. So every Friday we would take a field trip throughout central and western Nova Scotia, and the same in the Strait. Their field trips are staggered through the week as well. Essentially, this program just requires a high school graduation diploma equivalent, and each of these courses that you could click on, programs you could click on, would show you some of the career options and the application button. So I'll stop sharing there, and I just wrap up by saying, please think of NSEC as an option for environmental training. As I said, we are developing some micro credentials for mid-career professionals to upgrade and bring in new skills. We're also open to a wide range, committed to equity and diversity, and a wide range of students from many different parts and times in their life, whether they're just out of high school or wanted to retrain. So we welcome you. We have lots of opportunities for virtual tours at this point, and in-person tours shortly once we're allowed to do that again. So I'll wrap it up there and pass it back to Hillary, and perhaps answer any questions that might be out there.
Hi, Lee. Thanks, Leith. That was really great. I didn't realize how many different programs are offered that are related to the environment there. And a lot of the work that we do, we're trying to show youth that there's lots of options out there for them. So I guess while we're just waiting for any other questions, I can ask, maybe, I don't know if you do outreach with like high school students, but how do you kind of approach kind of older youth with these kind of options in a way that really gets them hooked?
Yeah, I think our most successful outreach is probably the open house that we host. It's usually the 3rd week of October each year. And that's a full day where students from the 1st and 2nd year will staff stations within the lab or shop or classroom, and essentially show their work to the incoming students. And it's a day where we have parents, you know, driving their older teen or whatever into to the campus and then doing a tour. And that opportunity with one-on-one is probably the best one to kind of hook the applicant. It's also on the open house days. There's also a free application to any program, so the application fee is waived for the open house dates. And I would say if anybody's thinking about it, if you're in grade 12, this would be the year to apply in October. Those students that are in STEP or O2, options and opportunities, can apply in grade 11, I believe, and they can kind of fast track or have a guaranteed seat as well. So there are a couple of options there. We also have dedicated seats. I mentioned we're an equity organization. We have dedicated seats for underrepresented groups within different technologies as well. So we've had excellent success with learners from across the spectrum, and really excited to welcome people to our campuses.
Yeah, that's great. I think I've actually participated in some NSCC open houses in the past, and the number of youth that come through there is quite incredible. But
yeah, it's hundreds in the run of a day. It's really great, and that's always a good opportunity.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Leif. It's been really great to hear what kinds of careers are out there for people that are interested in the environment. Before we move on, I've got one last poll that I'd like to share with folks. And I just want to see where people are tuning in from today. So if you can answer a quick poll about where you're located, hopefully an option is for you that is there. And Leaf, if you don't mind, I have one last question that just popped in. Maybe you can answer if you don't mind. Katie asked, what kinds of subject areas will your micro PD programs be focused on?
Oh, that's great. Thank you for the question. And yeah, so the first micro PD is a coastal protection offering. And I have it in front of me. We're developing it as we speak. But we want to infuse a Mi'kmaq perspective to coastal protection in this particular one. It is a 5-week micro-credential, and at the moment, the concept is it would have 5 modules, and each module will be a week long, and the program would culminate with a 5th module being a field camp, which would be on site, probably in the Cape Breton in the Strait area. And the other modules include an introduction to Indigenous knowledge, a module on environmental sustainability, a module on the data gathering, science and monitoring for coastal systems, coastal ecosystems, and then a week-long module on data management and analysis leading up to the field camp. So that's an example of a new offering. As I said, it's only a 5-week offering, and but it'll be a full-time immersion into kind of a deep dive into what coastal protection means. And we're going to kind of align it with the new Coastal Protection Act that the province introduced last year, and make sure that some of the skill sets that are required to implement that act are trained within our 5-week credential. So that's probably the best example I can give right now of one of these new micro PDs.
Great, thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so thank you for answering our last poll. It looks like about half of people are in Halifax, but it looks like we have some people tuning in from elsewhere in Nova Scotia, so that's great to hear. We have members in our group kind of from all over, so it's nice to know that we're reaching outside of just the urban area here in Halifax. So if you're just joining us, we've had some really great presentations throughout the afternoon. We had some in our second session from Kelly, Chloe, and Leaf that covered storytelling and watermark stories, composting and recycling, and environmental careers. And we've got one more scheduled for this afternoon with Becky Parker from the Young Naturalists Club, and they'll be sharing nature-based learning on the trail. So Becky, if you're all set there, I think we're ready for you.
Yeah, hi. Can you see me okay?
Yes, we can see you great.
Hi. Hi, so yeah, I'm Becky Parker. I'm the coordinator with the Young Naturalists Club. I've been a member of the Environment and Sustainability Education Caucus for a while now. And I'm going to jump right into my presentation here. I'm just going to share my screen. I know some folks are joining from the Young Naturalists Club, or Young Naturalists Club families are joining today. But for those of you who don't know us, we are a youth-based natural history society. You might have heard of our adult sister societies around the province, like the Bird Society, Halifax Field Naturalists, Blomidon Field Naturalists. There's a bunch of us around. We are focused on youth and families, and a big part of what we do is take families out on guided excursions to cool places around Nova Scotia where you can learn about our local natural history, everything from trees to lichens to the stars or whatever else you're interested in. So this is nature-based learning on the trail. I hope you can all see that okay, and it transitions all right. I wanted to go over just a couple things that I hear often from families. I thought this might be probably the best way to explain what we do and also address some common questions that I know that I get in the field quite a bit. And one of those is, a thing I get from parents quite a bit is, I just don't know what I don't know. I don't know what kinds of things I should be looking for when it comes to nature engagement. I don't know where to go to see certain things that my kids are interested in. So where do I go for those things, both physically, and then where do I find resources online or otherwise for those topics? And then another question I get a lot of the time is, how do I make this fun? Maybe you have one kid who's really into rocks or birds or something, but their sibling is not, and you're trying to have this fun family activity or camping trip when you're trying to incorporate some learning outcomes, and it's just not going as smoothly as you want. So how do we make it fun, easy, and how do we make these kinds of nature-based learning opportunities a habit for the family? So those are the things I'm going to be going over quickly. So the biggest thing that I tell people is, what you're looking at in nature, on the trail, on the boat, wherever you are, what you're looking at, what you're exploring isn't as important as how you're looking at it. So I like to say that the observation method is more important than the subject. And one example I have here is feathers. I don't know about you guys, but I find, especially when I have littles out, a feather on the ground must be picked up every time we cross it. Which, they're super cool, they're fun to play with, they kind of float when you drop them, but have you looked at a feather using a hand lens or some other tool that might change the way that you're observing something like a feather? So hand lenses are one of my absolute favorite tools for nature-based learning on the trail because they change how you see the world. And feathers are particularly fun to look at. You guys might already know this. The kids are always really excited to find out that feathers have these little barbs on them, these little needle-like projections that keep the feathers together. And then from there, once you're looking at structure and maybe talking about function in a different way than you were before when the feather was macroscopic and large, now you get to talk about things like, well, why is this feather like this? Why is it shaped like this? What do we think about the color? What else are we noticing that might give us some insights into how this feather is used or how it differs from other feathers? And can you guess what kind of bird it came from? So once you get to that different observation level, there's really endless possibilities when it comes to what kinds of things you can learn about, what kinds of questions you can ask. I also like to tell people to just expand your senses. So this is kind of related to changing how you see the world, but just expand your senses. Have you smelled anything recently? I like to ask kids often on the trail, what are you noticing besides what you see? We rely a lot of the time, especially in school, on what we're looking at and not necessarily what we're hearing or especially smelling, tasting maybe. So these are two of my favorite plants that are pretty common throughout most ecosystem types in Nova Scotia. One is blueberry and the other is teaberry or wintergreen. And they both have really fragrant leaves. So these are leaves that I'll pick up on the trail and I'll get my kids to smell. They smell a lot like they taste. So blueberry leaves are really interesting in that way, in that the leaves have this kind of, I describe it as like the aftertaste that blueberries have. That's what the smell is. And then I'll ask them questions. Well, why do you think that the blueberries and the leaves might have the same smell? And what is smell? And does smell have a function for the plant, for things that are eating it? So there's really endless conversations that you can be having in the woods when you're just looking at something that's common and usual. And tricks and stories. So it can be hard, I think, to make nature on maybe a rainy day and you're just trying to get to your next campsite really engaging if the kids aren't already into whatever the subject is. So tricks and stories are a nice way of introducing something that's new or maybe even something that's familiar, but doing it in a fun way. Certainly much more than what I would consider to be cold facts. So when I'm teaching bird ID, and this is true whether I'm working with kids or adults, I really like to use mnemonics or other little tricks to guess things. So for those of you who know your birds, you probably already know these calls. If you don't, we have an ovenbird here, the top left, a yellow warbler, and a chestnut-sided warbler. And I like to use these guys as examples, one, because they're fairly common throughout the province, but they also have these really easy to remember songs. One is Teacher, Teacher, Teacher. And then our warbler is Sweet, Sweet, I Am So Sweet. And our chestnut-sided warbler is my favorite. It says, Please, please, please to meet ya. You cannot forget those once you've had them pointed out in the field. So these are just other examples of how you can make nature-based learning just a little bit more fun, quick tricks. And then games, of course. So with the birds are a really great intro to nature, I like to think. So if you're learning bird calls or learning about bird ID, there's, I don't even know how many games, so many games you can play with birds when it comes to just guessing what that call was. You can have little contests. But scavenger hunts, hide and seek, I Spy, other games that you can do while walking or just standing outside are also really great for learning about nature without even noticing it. So I Spy is really great when you're taking long hikes. I really like I Spy when I'm trying to move a group through a place, because we can pick things that we can look at while we're moving. So something that's really great for that is, you know, I spy something making a sound, or something that is really, really large. And if you're in a forest, that's pretty easy because you're passing through pretty much the same ecosystem for a while. So you have quite a bit of time to guess. But there's no end to the possibilities you could take with scavenger hunts, with hide and seek and I Spy. Goals and incentives. So if you might find, probably the parents in the audience will find that you find this one really exciting activity, and then after a few minutes, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour if you're lucky, they're bored of it and you have to do something new. So setting a goal or a challenge can be a nice way of repeating your activities in a way that makes it so that you're still learning about nature while you're out there, but you're also still having fun and keeping the kids engaged. So I really like these little challenges if we're moving between places, but you can also do this stationary. You know, something like, okay, you have to bring back this many kinds of leaves and they all have to be different kinds. And sometimes you'll find like you're getting the same species, or maybe that's prompting discussion about why leaves look the same when they're actually from different species. And then prizes. So I find the kids I have out on the trail are much more likely to participate in a challenge, especially if they're a little bit shy, if I have a prize for them. So if you're a parent, I'm sure that you have found secret hidden chocolate to be one of the greatest motivators on the trail. I also like to use things like stickers. We have these little species at risk trading cards that we sell as a fundraiser that are also really good for that. It just makes it a friendly family game. And finally then, what's in your pack? So I mentioned that there are some tools you can use to expand your observations, to change how you're looking at things, and then that can prompt more conversation about nature around you. But these are some things that I like to keep in my bag. Some really hardcore naturalists will always have their binoculars and their field guides with them all the time. I like to leave my bulkier things behind usually, but also because I'm really interested in plants, I get away with that. I get to just look at the ground a lot of the time. But some things that are good to have are things like hand lenses, like I mentioned, a camera or a phone even, if you're going to take pictures of something. I find a lot of my kids like to take notes and draw pictures when we're out in the trail and we see something, especially if it's new. It can be fun to start logging things and describing them in notes for yourself later. A watch can actually be a really handy tool when learning about nature on the trail. You can use it for not only timekeeping, but also for navigating. And I actually can touch on that a little bit later if we have time. And then any kind of small guides that you can easily fit into your bag or kid's bag that aren't going to weigh you down too much, like a little guide for tracks, or maybe one of those fold-up brochures that have different species on them. Those are all great. All right, and then knowing where to go. So this is probably the question I get second most often from parents is, you know, I'm not that familiar with the area around me, or I'm new to Nova Scotia. Where do I go to see these kinds of things? And I have a similar answer, I guess, to this question. You know, nature is everywhere. So if your goal is to learn about just nature or a particular nature-related subject, it doesn't really matter where you go, because especially if you're using those tools to expand your observations, you can just go into your backyard and look at things under a hand lens all day. And for some kids, that will keep them occupied all day. But if you're looking for something really specific, I do have some tips that can help you narrow down where to go in the province. I mean, again, you know, this really depends on what you're looking for. But if you're looking for forests, you're in luck. In Nova Scotia, we have a lot of them. Old growth forests are getting harder to find, but there are resources for finding those. Birds are nice in Nova Scotia because you can literally go anywhere and go bird watching, which is why they're such a great gateway to nature. And then the beach. We're really lucky in Nova Scotia to have beaches, which I feel like often I go to the beach because I don't know very much about geology locally, and I don't pay attention to the rocks that I'm looking at until I go back out with a geologist friend and they tell me countless facts that are really interesting. It really doesn't matter where you end up going as long as you're adventuring with your group, you're having fun, you're learning something. if you're in the Halifax area, or even Halifax to Truro, really, this is a really great resource that I think came up earlier. So this is Earth Adventures that was made a couple years ago, actually, by our friends at Hike Nova Scotia and some local development researchers, naturalists, and other community groups. And the reason I really like this resource, I have the old book version, actually, and it's now online and a little bit bigger. I like this resource because you can go online and find a trail or some other area that you know your family might want to visit, but it also has a number of activities inside. And one of my favorites is this Black Duck Mystery, which is actually situated at Frog Pond here in Halifax. So a really great resource that I highly recommend checking out. I've used it in my work with the Young Naturalist Club, and I've used it in other positions. It's really great. earthadventures.ca. Hike Nova Scotia, I'm sure they mentioned they also have a list of trails on their website. So if you're not really sure where to go and you're looking for some good trails, Hike Nova Scotia has you covered. And then if you're looking for somewhere, I guess, off the beaten path, there is also this protected areas map from the province. Now, this is hosted by Nova Scotia Environment. And it's not meant as a recreational map. It's for informing people where our protected areas are. But some of these areas are accessible. So what I like to do when I'm scoping out a new area for exploring is check the protected areas map, go back to my trail map, see what kind of access points there are, and then I like to read a little bit more about the protected area that I would like to explore. So the ones that are available to the public normally have trail systems, and the government websites will tell you often how to get in and how you should be behaving in these areas. The reason I wanted to bring up this resource is because I feel like quite a few folks are not adventuring in some of our more distant wilderness areas and some of our other accessible protected areas, and they're really fascinating. So if you go onto Nova Scotia Environment's website, you can actually see the reasons for why certain protected areas have been listed the way that they are, and that can help guide, you know, what you're looking for or why you'd want to go out there. Yeah, so that's another one if you're looking at getting a little bit more intense on your adventuring. And then getting help and socializing. So this is really where the Young Naturalist Club comes in. You know, field guides, going out on your own is great, but really the best way and the most memorable way, I think, to learn about nature, whatever your chosen nature subject is to go out in a group. So go out with your family, go out with the grandparents, and go out with other families that are also interested in nature. That's how you make memories, and that's how you discover really cool things. These are some of my favorite resources for getting help. To start online, these are 3 places you might want to check out. I've talked about iNaturalist in presentations with the Young Naturalist Club before. It's a really handy app. If you're not already using it, I highly recommend it. You can also use it directly from your desktop, but basically iNaturalist lets you, it gives you identification help for countless species. So if you have a picture of something or even a sound recording of something and you don't know what it is, you can upload it to iNaturalist, and in sometimes seconds, a friendly neighborhood naturalist will ID it for you. So it's a really great tool for learning, but it also lets you contribute your the data that you're collecting outside, you know, on your hikes to citizen science efforts, which is pretty cool. If you're not already following our naturalist societies on Facebook, you should be. There's a lot of us. So the Young Naturalist Club is on Facebook. You can also find the Bird Society, Halifax Field Naturalist, Cape Breton Naturalist, Blomidon, Wild Flora Society. There's a lot of us, and a lot of our groups lead hikes, which are super fun. You should definitely check them out. And then our own website also has resources. So if you go to yncns.ca/resources, you can find the scavenger hunts that I had in my presentation a little earlier. We also have links to some of our partners' websites, so check that out too. And then in person, so I definitely recommend joining a naturalist society. If you're a family, if you're youth, join the Young Naturalist Club. We lead hikes on a monthly basis in communities around the province. They're super fun. An intro birding walk, if you're really new to nature, or if you're unsure about where to go, or a little bit nervous about exploring too deep into the woods yet, intro birding walks are a really great way to just get comfortable in nature. So the Bird Society puts on bird walks every year. COVID kind of put a damper on those, but we'll be leading more hikes, and our partner organizations, other natural societies, will be leading more hikes. Just keep an eye out. And then watch for events. So one event that we do every year, and is one of my favorites, is the Christmas bird count and the Christmas bird count for kids. These happen every December to January. There's always a couple adult efforts around Halifax and throughout Nova Scotia, and we do one every year in Halifax. This year we also did one in Dartmouth, East Hants, and Western Cape Breton, and they were all super fun. So this is a really great way to just get out with some other families, learn about bird ID, learn about bird ecology, and of course feed some chickadees, which is always the most popular activity. The celebration of nature. So this is an event that we put on in partnership with our other adult naturalist societies. So Nature Nova Scotia is our umbrella organization locally, and they put this really great event on every year in May. Unfortunately, this year it was postponed because of COVID, but it's a super fun excursion. It's a weekend-long trip to some cool wild area of Nova Scotia. And the postponed event, now happening in 2021, is going to be in Halifax, which should be really convenient for most of our attendees today. Field trip to national wildlife areas. So this is something that we have done every year for the past couple of years now, and they're always really fun. In fact, sometimes we've linked them with the celebration of nature trip. So while the adults are involved in presentations and discussions about conservation in Nova Scotia, we have a youth program going on at that event. And one really fun thing that we've done with families that have youth with them is go visit a national wildlife area in Nova Scotia. We're lucky to have quite a few of them, and they're really cool places to visit. So we should be doing another one of these in the fall. So if you're not following us already, definitely have a look on Facebook or check out our website. And then how do we make nature learning fun and a habit? So you have some tips for expanding your observations, for where to go. Another good tip is to set goals for the season. So I actually do this within my own family of just my partner and I. We set goals every year for how many various experiences we're going to have. So one could be how many beaches you want to visit this year. And then having that goal, you could stick it on your fridge or something. Having that goal encourages you to go out and meet that goal as a family. So you're exploring new areas where you might not have before. And of course, adventure in groups, like I mentioned, bring the grandparents, pair up with another family, join your naturalist society. It's always more fun and more memorable when you're exploring in groups. And this is a really important one. If your kids are a little bit wary of nature, if you're new to nature, start with what the kids are already interested in, and then branch out from there. Or as I like to say, come for the whales and stay for the plankton. So in summary, nature-based learning on the trail is really not that hard. Start with what you know or what you're interested in. Pick places close to home. You can experiment with more remote adventures, whatever you're comfortable with. Use tools. Everything can be a tool. Get a hand lens, they're my favorite. But yeah, anything can be used to expand your observations. Even just getting right down on the ground to look at something is a great way to learn. And adventure in groups, make memories. So that's it for me, guys. So I'll move over to questions.
Thanks so much, Becky. That was a really great presentation. I definitely learned a lot of tips to kind of, I really like the mnemonics that you shared, because sometimes when we're talking about animals or organisms, there's so many different species, but those little tricks to get it to stick in your brain are really great.
Yeah, bird walks are always super fun. Yeah.
Just while I'm waiting to see if any other questions come in, I do have a quick question.
Sure.
I guess you did share some tips on the end to kind of make it a habit. I guess that people are engaged with nature. But have you found that there's any kind of particular way you can end an activity that makes the impact last longer than just the activity, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. So something that I'll often do at the beginning of an activity is, if a group is new, some sort of like nature-based icebreaker or game. So usually I'll revisit that at the end of an activity, and it could be anything. Yeah, it could be playing the same game again, but incorporating the lessons that we've learned on our hike. Another great thing to do is to just sit down and ask the kids what they thought. Sometimes you hear really insightful, crazy things when you just ask the kids, well, what did you think about this? Or what did you like about today? You'll often have to wait too, I think. You have to be patient. with kids when you ask them things like that, because sometimes they can really hold their thoughts to themselves. But yeah, it's just taking a little bit of time after. Thanks for pointing that out, because that's actually a really, really great thing to do at the end of your hike.
Yeah, well, yeah, it sounds great. And yeah, sometimes when you ask youth what they're thinking, I definitely, sometimes you can tell when it's going to be a little long-winded, and sometimes I do try and wrap that up, but I think you're right that it is really important to just give them a little bit more time to get that out, because they've got something in there. It's just a little harder to.
Yeah, camping trips are nice for that, because you have a lot of time to waste.
Right.
So it's nice to just kind of wait it out. And I find often the kids will prompt their own discussions in a group, sometimes before they'll offer a thought readily to me. So sometimes it's nice to just listen to.
Yeah, that's great. I don't think we have any more questions, but are you okay if I pass it over to you to close us off for the afternoon?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I guess I can thank everybody for coming out. Yeah. So if you aren't following the Environment and Sustainability Education Caucus, definitely do. We do this event every year, as I'm sure you heard, although this year it's been moved online, which was a great thing, a great learning opportunity for us. But we also meet monthly. So if you're interested in environmental education or just the environment in general or sustainability in general, the group is a great resource. So follow us on Facebook, come out to the meetings, especially when they start happening in person again. And yeah, keep adventuring and following us on social media, and check out everybody's websites and see what's going on in nature and sustainability in Nova Scotia. I can close us out there, guys. So thank you to all of our panelists again for being here, and we'll see you later. Bye.